Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Chapter 40. Enraged. The hallway fell into an eerie silence. It was so quiet it was suffocating. Everyone stood frozen, shocked by what had just happened. Sosuke Kitahara slowly pulled his katana from Mr. Toji's throat. But as soon as he moved, the people across from him immediately shrieked in terror. Kota, panicked, stumbled over his own foot and landed hard on his butt. He didn't even care about the pain as he scrambled backward, stammering, "What are you doing? Don't you know you just killed someone? Everyone here saw it, we're all witnesses. Are you planning to kill all of us too? Hey. So what if I did? Some people alive are more dangerous than zombies. Back before I reset my life, I killed plenty of scum worse than this." In his past life, Sosuke's days in the apocalypse were spent in constant, brutal tension, blood, death, endless battles. It was a cold, crimson world of darkness. The killing intent within Sosuke had now fully awakened. That guy might not have acted yet, but Sosuke could tell he had intended to. He just hadn't had the chance. And the others who'd rallied behind Toji? He might as well just kill them all and be done with it. Sosuke's eyes grew dark and deep, his breathing intensified, and his pupils slowly began to turn red. The cold steel of his katana soothed his burning palm. A strange, inexplicable thrill trembled within him. "Sosuke, be careful. Toji's turning." Kasumijoka Yuta Hazard's cry snapped Sosuke out of his bloodlust just in time. Right, he wasn't alone anymore. He quickly reminded himself that there were still 2 women behind him whose trust in him wasn't yet solid. And these 2 weren't just anyone, they were people selected by his system, potential future companions. If he slaughtered everyone here now, the Yukinoshita sisters' perception of him would shift dramatically. Whatever favor he'd earned by saving Yukinoshita earlier would likely be completely negated by the fear he would instill. They would probably start keeping their distance and guarding themselves against him. That would directly contradict Sosuke's goal of saving them. There were still 2 days until the zombie outbreak would spiral out of control. Their mindset wouldn't shift that quickly. As long as they retained their normal worldview, they would never willingly follow a bloodthirsty killer. The few who had backed Toji's call for action had unknowingly brushed past the gates of hell. Sosuke's gaze shifted away from the trembling Kota on the floor. Without sparing a glance at Mr. Toji, whose pupils had begun to fade into lifeless gray, he calmly thrust his blade into Toji's skull. The half-turned zombie didn't even get the chance to roar twice before his head lolled to the side, dying a second time. There was no satisfaction in defeating scum like this. People like him who flaunted their status but couldn't read the situation would soon be eliminated. In just a few months, when high-level awakened would emerge, all these social ranks and titles would mean nothing. "Bro, calm down, let's talk this out." A tall, skinny guy stepped out from the crowd with both hands raised in a peace gesture. A girl quickly rushed over to grab his arm, whispering anxiously, "Okay, don't go. He has a blade, you saw how he killed that guy just now. Don't worry, Asami." Akai gently patted her hand, offering a comforting smile. This guy was just forced to defend himself, anyone would have done the same. "I wouldn't hand over my weapon so easily either." As Akai spoke, he casually pulled out a pack of cigarettes, strolled up to Sosuke, and smiled. "Name's Akai. 3rd-year student at Keio University. That's my girlfriend Asami. We were just here for a little vacation since we had a few days off. Didn't think we'd walk straight into a nightmare. I don't smoke." Sosuke waved him off coldly. "Careful guy, huh? I respect that, bro." Akai didn't insist. He lit a cigarette for himself and continued with a chuckle, "But seriously, with you only covered in blood like that, people are bound to worry. You're sure you weren't bitten, right?" Noticing Sosuke's brows start to knit together, Akai quickly raised his hands again. Hey, I'm not after your weapon or anything. Just asking so everyone can relax, you know. But with your skills. If you don't want to be checked, I doubt anyone here has the guts to force you." "Look at my clothes," Sosuke said flatly. "If I'd been bitten, The wound would have kept bleeding. There would have been obvious sweat stains. But all this blood is already starting to dry. Trust me, none of the four of us are going to turn into zombies. Since he had no intention of killing them now, Sosuke figured there was no point in further escalating things. After a slight pause, he pointed toward a woman in the crowd who looked noticeably pale and sluggish. But that girl over there, she doesn't seem to be doing well. Ah, her? I heard she's the secretary to President Ikasaka. Her heart medication was left downstairs in the office. She's been feeling pretty rough since she hasn't taken it yet, but I can vouch she definitely wasn't bitten. Sosuke gave her a long, thoughtful look. So, she was the president's secretary. That explained why Yomaeda and the others had risked their lives to go downstairs. They were trying to curry favor. 2 men had already died for her sake, and Yukino Shita had almost lost her life as well. Clearly, this woman wasn't just a simple secretary. Akai glanced at Sosuke and suddenly remembered why he'd approached in the first place. He lowered his voice and leaned in. Bro, can I talk to you in private? There's something I'd like to discuss. Seriously? Can't you give it a rest? Sosuke shot him a cold glare, thoroughly annoyed. This guy really wasn't going to stop. Did he think Sosuke had forgotten that he'd been among those who'd stood up with Toji earlier? Sosuke jabbed his finger toward the 2 nearby offices. Scram. Since you're also worried we'll turn, we're taking over these offices. No one's allowed near them. You. Akai's face flushed red with frustration. He'd wanted to negotiate, but Sosuke didn't even give him a chance. He'd just shut him down immediately. Yet, thinking of how ruthlessly Sosuke had killed Toji, Akai didn't dare push back. You're really not gonna hear me out? Did I stutter? Sosuke's sharp gaze bore into him. Akai's knees nearly buckled. Even though his chest was burning with anger, he didn't dare explode. Just you wait. You'll regret this later. Grinding his teeth, Akai etched the words into his mind. Somehow, the phrase seemed to embolden him. His trembling body steadied, and in his imagination, he could already see Sosuke kneeling before him, begging for mercy. And that woman, yeah, she could die here too. When his girlfriend Isami hurried over, her face full of concern, Akai quickly returned to his usual, gentle self. That confident, soft-spoken boyfriend, all smiles again. No one noticed the large, dirty footprint now stamped on the lifeless hand of Mr. Toji's corpse. Chapter 41, Kindness in the Apocalypse. When people are under extreme stress, time always seems to fly by. For Sosuke Kitahara and his group, who had just narrowly escaped death, this felt especially true. Before they realized it, night had already fallen outside. When Sosuke returned to the office, he found Yukino Shita sitting alone. Seeing him stride in, she tilted her head and asked, Sosuke, did you find anything to eat? Just some bottled water and biscuits. Sosuke placed the plastic bag on the table and had barely sat down when the wooden door to the inner room swung open. Haruno Shita and Utaha Kazamijoka walked out. Haruno scowled, saying, the food and water in the rooms have been completely cleaned out. There were only a few empty instant noodle cups left on the floor, and even the pantry was completely empty. Oh? Where did you find these bottles of water? Haruno asked, visibly relieved. Found them in the conference room. There was a zombie locked inside, and none of those people dared to go in, Sosuke replied as he pushed the bottles toward them. Then he pulled out 3 packs of compressed biscuits from his bag and handed them out. We'll have to make do for tonight. If it comes to it, we'll decide what to do tomorrow. Compressed biscuits, an old but reliable product, had evolved from simple emergency rations to more palatable, balanced options. Their dense texture and low water content meant they were far more filling than ordinary food of the same volume. At this point, everyone was starving. Food that would have been unappealing in normal times was now devoured eagerly. This office was different from the others. It came with a rest area, complete with a folding bed, bedding, and pillows. But none of the girls wanted to sleep in there alone. They felt safer staying together, so they brought the bedding out to the main office and laid it on the floor. Sosuke stood by the window, arms crossed, his brows furrowed as he stared outside, feeling like he had overlooked something. Yukino and Haruno leaned against each other on the sofa in silence. Even Utaha, usually good at pulling all-nighters, sat warily on the bedding, staring blankly. They all seemed like empty shells, their souls barely clinging to their bodies. Sosuke, this is for you. Haruno gently nudged the sleepy Yukino, walked over, and handed Sosuke 2 small sausages. I secretly kept these. I was saving them for Yukino and myself in case of emergencies. Then you two should eat them. I'm already full. Sosuke lightly pushed the sausages back toward her, shaking his head. But Haruno insisted, you worked the hardest today. If you hadn't helped us, Yukino might not have made it. You should have them. Then let's split them evenly. There are 2 anyway. Sosuke broke one in half and handed it to Utaha. I'm going out to check for any more potential problems. You all should rest early. I'll take the night watch. You're worried? Utaha gently bit into the sausage. The fire door is only blocked by a wooden plank. It would be easy to remove. I'm worried something might happen tonight. If someone tries something, this office, being closest to the door, will be the first danger zone. I'll take over the second half of the night shift, Haruno offered. In the quiet office, Yukino, unable to sleep, got up from the bedding, her legs moving awkwardly as she blushed. She glanced at her sleeping sister, hesitated, but didn't wake her. Both Sosuke and Utaha were nowhere to be seen. Biting her lip, Yukino quietly pushed open the office door, gripping her wooden stick as she crept toward the restroom. But after just a few steps, she regretted it. The restroom was near the fire door, and to avoid disturbing the zombies, the lights in that area had been turned off. It was pitch black, and the phone light barely illuminated a small patch in front of her. To make it worse, Toji's corpse still lay nearby, sending chills down her spine. Yet, the more she feared, the stronger her urge to pee became. Yukino deeply regretted drinking so much water during their panic in the afternoon. Yukino clutched her face in distress. The corridor was dead silent. Steeling herself, she turned and slipped into the nearby office area. How many people had ever considered peeing in an office? Yukino hadn't, not until now. But desperate times called for desperate measures. She quietly moved to a spot behind a desk where the glass windows couldn't reveal her. She reached under her pleated skirt, pulled her underwear down to her knees, and just as she was about to squat, she suddenly heard footsteps. Yukino hurriedly pulled up her underwear, her heart leaping to her throat. Tap, tap. The footsteps approached steadily. It sounded human. Relieved, Yukino noted that zombies' shuffling steps were easy to distinguish. Still, she didn't dare stick her head out to see who it was. Fortunately, the person didn't come toward her but instead stopped by the window. Under the moonlight, two shadows stretched across the floor. Sosuke, I don't know how to describe how I feel right now. Hiding under the desk, Yukino blinked in surprise. That was Utaha's voice. And the other person must be Sosuke. What were they doing here in the middle of the night? On the other side, Sosuke gazed into Utaha's clear, glimmering eyes and took the handgun from her hands, gently wiping the surface. Let me guess. Is it because I didn't help those men this morning? I waited until the zombies killed them to take their guns. Or is it because I killed someone so suddenly? I don't even know. Utaha shook her head, her brilliant eyes reflecting the moonlight. Deep down, I know you must have your reasons. You're not the type to kill indiscriminately. But did it really have to come to this? Isn't it too inhumane? Sosuke met her gaze and saw the confusion in her eyes. He silently checked her trust level. It was still at 90%. Sigh. Sosuke sighed. He could pretty much guess what was going on. Utaha, despite her sharp tongue and ability to pierce straight into others' weaknesses, was actually just like Yukino, a kind-hearted girl deep down. This kind of kindness, caught between peace and the apocalypse, was one of the hardest emotions to handle. In the apocalypse, people who stubbornly clung to kindness usually faced three outcomes. The lucky ones found trustworthy companions who supported each other. The slightly less fortunate ones faced betrayal or danger, survived, but became irreversibly hardened. And the most tragic, those whose kindness didn't bring friendship but humiliation, betrayal, or death. Sosuke pulled a chocolate bar from his pocket and handed it to her. So, Utaha, what do you think is the most important core for a team to survive? Chapter 42, The Nature of Humanity. It's a sense of belonging. At least, that's what I believe. When people feel they belong to a team, they naturally protect that team. They'll be willing to do a lot for it and won't want to leave. Utaha Kazamijoka spoke her thoughts directly, but Sosuke Kitahara immediately cut her off, spreading his hands. Since you understand that so well, what else is there for me to say? There are more than 10 people on their side. Including the Yukinoshita sisters, there are only 4 of us. Don't forget, in their eyes, we're just a bunch of naive high school kids. Have you already forgotten the way Doji looked at us this afternoon? He acted all high and mighty, despite having no real strength. He used his position and moral rhetoric to incite people against us. Let me be blunt, he never cared about our lives. When he accused me of being bitten, he was simply after my katana. In fact, I bet he would have loved to see me dead. People like us, in his eyes, have never faced society's cruelty, and thus, we don't respect those so-called big shots. That's only because they hadn't seen you in action. Utaha raised her eyebrows, her voice full of conviction. Sosuke, you're strong enough to lead them. Strength in numbers. When people band together, the group's interests become everyone's interests. Alone, we're nothing but drifting weeds. Together, we're a rope. Utah, this isn't a student council election. Don't forget what we look like to them, just high school kids. You can't expect people to follow you just because you step forward. A flicker of sorrow passed through Sosuke's eyes as he shook his head and met her gaze. If the group was full of people like you, I wouldn't hesitate to fight for them with everything I've got. But look at who we're actually dealing with. He sneered. These people would push others into zombie hordes to buy themselves time without blinking. They cowered on this floor, too scared to go downstairs, yet the moment they saw us exhausted, they bared their fangs. Once I killed Toji, they immediately backed down, not daring to utter another word. Classic bullies, they prey on the weak and fear the strong. With people like that, I'd rather go solo. At least no one will drag me down. Like I said before, not everyone deserves to be protected. Snowed under the office desk, Yukino Shita was left speechless. Memories of that horrifying moment when someone shoved her into the zombie horde flashed back vividly. Her back still ached from the brutal impact on the stairs. Deep inside, she wrestled with herself. Sosuke's brutal logic clashed fiercely with her ingrained beliefs. She had to admit, though Sosuke's stance was harsh and self-centered, his words were painfully accurate. Even if those people weren't complete scumbags, they were certainly cowards. Her mind drifted to the moment Sosuke killed Toji. She had wondered then, was it truly necessary to go that far? Utah, look outside. Sosuke carefully pushed open the window and pointed outside. Take a good look. What do you see? There's nothing. No cars driving by, no sirens, no rescue signals. If even one vehicle passed, or a single siren sounded, I wouldn't be saying things this coldly. Wake up, Utah. This isn't a game. We're living through an apocalypse that could wipe out all of humanity. Sigh. Utah let out a heavy sigh, staring out the window in a daze. The once bustling city now lay in utter darkness. The occasional noises were impossible to distinguish, were they from survivors or from zombies. The faint, terrified screams still echoed intermittently. Worst of all, gunfire and explosions had not stopped, even though they were far away. The chaos was far from over. Utah kept staring into the darkness outside as an overwhelming chill surged through her, raising goosebumps all over her skin. A dreadful thought crossed her mind: would the helicopter really come tomorrow? Even if it did, with over 20 people still alive on this floor, would they obediently wait for their turn while watching Sosuke's group board first? Could they possibly have that kind of discipline? Impossible. If everyone charged the helicopter in desperation, fighting for seats, what should they do then? What should they do? Utah sank into deep thought. She had never faced such a dilemma before and found herself completely at a loss. Suddenly, a terrifying realization dawned on her. Could it be? Could Sosuke have foreseen this from the beginning? Had he already prepared for such a situation? Was that why he was telling her all this? Sosuke was warning her in advance. Could it be he planned to? Understanding finally struck Utah like a tidal wave, suffocating her in the overwhelming darkness. She stumbled backward in shock. For the first time, Sosuke's expression softened with a trace of tenderness. Supporting her by the waist, he said gently, "It's not that I'm cold-blooded. It's that this brutal world forces me to be. The phones are dead. You've seen for yourself how serious this is. I understand. You're doing this so we can survive." It took Utah a long time to calm her breathing. When she finally raised her head, her gaze was heavy with emotion. She pressed her palm to her forehead and sighed, as if she had made a decision she never thought she would. She lightly brushed her hand over the pistol at her waist. Noticing her gesture, Sosuke frowned. "What? Are you still thinking about those guys we passed on the road?" Utah had already came to terms with it. She was not someone who hesitated once she made up her mind. Still, when Sosuke asked, she couldn't help but recall the scene where he had recklessly charged into the zombie horde to rescue Yukino. She averted her gaze and toyed with her slender fingers. "You reacted pretty fast when you saw Yukino fall into the zombie horde. Didn't even think twice before you rushed in to save her." Sensing a faint hint of jealousy, Sosuke's heart bloomed with delight, though he deliberately furrowed his brows and feigned disappointment. "Utah, you've got it all wrong. Yukino and those people on the road are not the same." Utah hummed softly, lowering her head as she twirled a strand of her hair. "Yukino is a cute girl. Of course, she's different from those people." Chapter 43, burning with urgency. Why are they suddenly talking about me? Yukino Shita's heart skipped a beat. Before she could fully process it, she felt the weight of someone sitting on the desk she was hiding under. She immediately held her breath. Right now, Sosuke Kitahara's entire focus was on Utah Kasumajoka. He had no idea someone was eavesdropping just under his seat. Back then, there were two men. I was confident I could save them. He paused, then raised his head. "But, Utah, have you considered? Both of them had guns. If I got them into the car but they didn't feel grateful, what then? Utaha blinked, confused. Huh? In that car, besides those two grown men, it would just be two high schoolers, a boy focused on driving, and a girl in the passenger seat. And that girl was very beautiful. Sosuke continued calmly, what if, midway through, those two men developed bad intentions? They both had guns. If one of them aimed a gun at my head, I wouldn't be able to do anything. Once I was subdued, where could you possibly run? Utaha was stunned. They wouldn't, right? Did you see how they dressed? Shaved heads, gold chains, guns. That's textbook Yakuza style. They practically had "I'm dangerous, I'm a bad guy, don't mess with me" tattooed on their foreheads. Normal people don't dress like that. It's like those girls who drink, smoke, party, and tattoo themselves, yet still insist they're good girls. Sure, maybe 1 in 1,000 really is, but let's be honest. Sosuke remained composed. You might think I'm overthinking it, but in this world, you don't get a second chance. I don't create liabilities. If I didn't get out of the car to save them, I kept control. If they saved themselves, I could leave immediately. But if I let them into the car, they would seize control with those two guns. I might end up dead. He didn't need to spell out what would happen to Utaha or Yukino if he died. Both girls shivered at the thought. Saving the world, saving everyone. Sosuke had never entertained such grand ideals. That kind of mission was meant for protagonists blessed by the world. But Sosuke Kitahara wasn't one of them. His world was small. Too small to contain such lofty ambitions. Survive the apocalypse, grow stronger, build a small team of trustworthy allies who could watch each other's backs, and protect the people he cared about. That was more than enough for him. Don't overthink it. I'm just tired and wanted to lean on you for a moment. Feeling the depth of his concern, Utaha leaned against Sosuke's chest, quietly listening to his heartbeat. Her smooth forehead glistened under the moonlight, her bright eyes shimmering. But what if, someday, I really... You won't. I won't let anyone hurt you. Sosuke cut her off without hesitation. It was such a touching statement, but then he added with dead seriousness, because the only one allowed to bully you is me. Ahem. Utaha nearly choked on her own saliva, coughing hard as her face flushed bright red. She stared at Sosuke, half angry, half amused. You're messing with me on purpose, aren't you? Who says things like that so suddenly? Having changed out of her school uniform, Utaha now wore comfortable casual clothes for easier movement. Sosuke couldn't help but admire her snow-white face, her delicate jawline, her crystal-clear eyes that radiated charm. As he patted her back, his hand subtly slipped around her soft, curvy waist. Of course, Utaha noticed his hand but didn't push it away. A strange, unexplainable feeling welled up inside her. She actually enjoyed this, feeling safe in his embrace. Sure, Sosuke was pretty shameless, but his genuine concern made her feel protected. Maybe a bit of shamelessness wasn't such a terrible flaw. I should have never stopped that day, Sosuke muttered suddenly. No one told you to stop. Anyway, I've already kept my promise. Seeing Utaha smile, her eyes radiant in the moonlight, her lips beautifully curved, and catching a faint hint of her scent, Sosuke inched closer and pulled her tightly into his arms. Utaha didn't resist. She genuinely liked the feeling of being in his embrace. It was broad, warm, and comforting. Sosuke gently cupped her soft, flawless cheek and leaned in to kiss her. But Utaha wouldn't fully cooperate. She kept her lips pursed and her head moving to avoid him. When Sosuke shifted his attention to her neck, his hand around her waist slowly slid upward over her clothes. Utaha quickly caught his mischievous hand, trying to stop him, but she didn't resist his kisses. Her head grew dizzy, her breathing grew rapid, and she gradually gave in to the heat of the moment. Realizing she had unintentionally let him have his way, Utaha also became intoxicated by Sosuke's masculine presence and started responding passionately. Such a little temptress. Her breaths carried a faint sweetness, and Sosuke was equally overwhelmed, his head spinning. But Utaha, while allowing him to embrace her waist, firmly resisted letting his hand wander elsewhere, the two of them quietly wrestling for control. Sosuke's hand moved inch by inch up her clothes, while Utaha persistently dragged it down. Even so, just holding her enticing body was enough to feel her incredible softness, like she had no bones at all. It was impossible to say she fully agreed, but it was equally hard to claim she was rejecting him, considering how eagerly she kissed back. Just as Sosuke was about to make a bolder move, a faint, rapid breath came from under the desk. It was a quiet sound. But for someone like Sosuke, whose physical skills had reached the first tier and who had mastered advanced breathing techniques, it was impossible to miss. Someone was there. Sosuke froze, his expression instantly darkening. Seriously? Someone had the nerve to eavesdrop on him? Just as he was about to act, he felt a sharp pain on his lips. The soft hand on his shoulder shoved him away. Utaha, breathing heavily, straightened her clothes and glared at Sosuke with a mix of anger and amusement. You're really getting out of hand. You said you weren't interested in Yukino Shida, but after holding her in your arms all day, look at you now, burning with urgency. You were never like this before. Chapter 44, Yukino's troubled heart. Yukino swore these past few minutes were the most embarrassing in her life. Not even when a pervert stole her little shoes from the school lockers had she felt this helpless. And right now, the intense urge to pee was making her lower abdomen throb painfully. Gritting her teeth, Yukino made a decision. Enough hiding. She would go out, apologize to Sosuke and the others. After all, she hadn't intended to eavesdrop on their conversation. It was just an accident. She really couldn't hold it anymore. Just as she prepared to stand up and greet them in the moonlight, the two shadows in the dark suddenly overlapped. The smaller figure tilted her head up, intimately hooking her arms around the neck of the taller figure. Faint, breathy moans escaped from Utaha Kazamijoka's lips. Yukino's body froze. A rush of blurred images flashed uncontrollably in her mind. Her face instantly flushed red, the blush even creeping up to her neck. They aren't doing that here, are they? A strange emptiness suddenly swept over Yukino's heart, as if something precious had just been taken away. Sigh. Yukino let out a silent sigh. She realized she had been feeling desperately insecure. Given her personality, she wouldn't easily fall for someone. But in that moment of deep despair, Sosuke Kitaher had descended like a god, shielding her and carrying her to safety through the horde of zombies. It wasn't exactly the classic tale of a hero saving a damsel, but Yukino had undeniably developed feelings for Sosuke. Soon enough, the moaning from behind the desk stopped, replaced by Sosuke's pained yelp. Listening to the conversation that followed, Yukino finally realized they were just kissing. I thought they were. A wave of relief washed over her, but the next part of their exchange left her completely dumbfounded. Because of me? Sosuke became like that because of me? Did holding me set him off? But why would a couple bring up another girl in a moment like that? Were they using my name as part of their excitement? Shameless perverts. Yukino, face blazing, cursed furiously in her heart. Any budding feelings she had for Sosuke instantly shattered. And Utaha Kazamijoka too. Who would have thought such a graceful and elegant girl would indulge in something this twisted? If Sosuke ever tried something like that with her, she would definitely bite him, hard. Ugh. Why would I ever imagine doing something like that with Sosuke Kitahara? Her face still burning, Yukino scolded herself heavily in her heart. The conversation behind the desk had inadvertently dragged her into their mess, making her stupidly wonder what she would have done in that situation. On the other side, Utaha, fearing Sosuke would push for more, quickly straightened her clothes and headed back to her room. Of course, Sosuke accompanied her, though he hadn't forgotten about the sneaky eavesdropper hiding in the office. Tonight had been the perfect opportunity. The atmosphere was set, Utaha was no longer that resistant, and if Sosuke had just pushed a little more, it would have all happened naturally. But it was all ruined by that little spy under the desk. Sosuke's face darkened like the bottom of a pot. He certainly had no fetish for public performances. Luckily, Utaha, frazzled and flustered, didn't seem to notice anything. When they reached the door, Sosuke lightly coughed and pretended nothing happened. Utaha, I just remembered there's one more place I haven't checked. You go back first, I'll double check it. Be careful then. When you get back, wake me up, I'll take over the night watch, Utaha said, having returned to her usual composure, though her mind was still a whirlwind of emotions she needed to sort through later. Yahari said she would take the next watch, Sosuke shook his head casually, glancing briefly at the office. You just focus on getting some rest. When it's time, I'll wake her. After they left, Yukino, her face still burning, finally crawled out from under the desk. Her pale cheeks were flushed bright red. Seeing the empty office, she quickly slipped off her underwear and squatted down. At that moment, a shadow quietly approached the office. What's that sound? Sosuke, who had circled back to the office, heard a faint sound as he neared the door. Narrowing his eyes, he carefully focused on the desk, listening intently. The sound became clear, a faint trickling, like someone pouring water onto the ground. Water? Pouring water on the floor? A sudden chill shot through Sosuke. Why would someone be pouring water on the floor this late at night? Wait, it's not water. It's gasoline. The thought had barely formed when Sosuke's face darkened instantly. What a vicious bastard, planning to burn them alive under the cover of night. With lightning speed, he charged forward. He had to stop them before they could light the fire. Meanwhile, the squatting Yukino also heard the approaching footsteps, but she was too flustered to react in time. When she looked up, she found herself staring directly into Sosuke's eyes. Her mind went blank. She had no idea why Sosuke had suddenly rushed back, but this sudden scene completely stunned her. "Don't look," Yukino whimpered, quickly lowering her head in shame and panic. She couldn't just stand up and pull her underwear back up in front of him. She instinctively tightened her muscles, trying to suppress the sound, but the pressure only made the stream come out faster, loudly splashing onto the floor. Even though she admitted to having a bit of a crush on Sosuke, she never imagined relieving herself right in front of him. Her face flushed even deeper as she buried it in her knees. After finishing, she hurriedly pulled up her underwear. Though still mortified, she felt a tiny bit more composed and finally crawled out from under the desk. Sosuke was nowhere in sight, easing her panic just a little. At least she wouldn't have to face him immediately. Her hands still cupping her scalding cheeks, Yukino tried to console herself. But with Sosuke gone, the office felt unnervingly quiet. Yukino could clearly hear her own heartbeat, and the chill that crept over her skin made her shiver. Fear quickly overtook her embarrassment. "I can't hide forever. Eventually, I'll have to face him." Yukino bent down to pick up the wooden stick nearby, but her nose suddenly soured. She realized that while relieving herself, she had lifted her skirt, meaning he probably saw her butt. Jerk. Her heart was filled with grievance. He had just been getting cozy with another woman right in front of her, then turned around and took advantage of her. But as soon as she thought about how Sosuke had risked his life to save her, her eyes reddened again. She felt anxious, unsure if she could face him calmly in the future. With complicated feelings, Yukino weaved through several desks. The dim corridor appeared before her, and the faint growls of zombies echoed ominously from the distance. Yukino stiffened immediately, no longer daring to entertain random thoughts. She tightened her grip on the wooden stick and quietly crept toward the door. Chapter 45, Midnight Murder. Did the zombies break through this floor? Yukino Shita cautiously crept forward, her mind racing. Just as she was about to peek around the corner, a dark figure suddenly appeared in front of the door. Her face went pale, and her heart skipped 2 beats like she'd just seen a ghost. In her panic, she swung her wooden stick at the figure without thinking. But surprisingly, there was no cracking sound of a skull being hit. Instead, the stick was caught firmly by a pair of large hands. Yukino was shocked. Zombies can grab sticks now. When she finally focused, she blurted out, "Sosuke. Why is it you? SHH. SHH. Sosuke Kitahara's heart pounded as he quickly covered her mouth, pulling her inside and frantically shushing her. Realizing what had just happened, Yukino's face flushed with embarrassment, and she quickly nodded. When he finally removed his hand, Yukino took a few deep breaths, then whispered, "What was that noise outside? Was it zombies?" "Probably, but the sound didn't come from our area. It came from the other group's side." Sosuke lowered his voice. "Zombies over there?" Yukino frowned. "I thought we cleared this floor. Could some have slipped through? Before you all went to sleep, I double-checked everything. This floor's elevators require special access to open. We also blocked the elevator doors with sofas, and the emergency exits are chained shut. Without keys, no one can open them." Sosuke glared at her. "There are only 2 possibilities: someone let zombies in from downstairs, or one of their people turned." "What?" Yukino instinctively covered her mouth in disbelief, but quickly realized Sosuke wouldn't joke about something like this. She lowered her voice again. "Would anyone really let zombies in on purpose? There's no escape route. Unless they have the elevator key. You think the secretary has it? I hope it's the second case. But don't forget, that secretary, she's the company president's assistant. She might have an access card. But she was fine earlier. Why would someone suddenly turn? Didn't they insist on checking us for bites? Wouldn't they have checked themselves? SHH. Look over there." Sosuke gently pulled Yukino to the other side, and she pressed herself against the door, cautiously peeking outside. Now of all times, they're making out? Didn't they hear the noise? Yukino frowned in disbelief. Not far away, 2 figures were passionately kissing in the corridor. From their silhouettes, one of them was the secretary, now straddling another woman in a business suit who leaned casually against the wall as they kissed deeply. "Sosuke, should we go remind them?" Yukino poked him in frustration, but Sosuke slowly shook his head. The 2 women were completely engrossed, their desperate kissing sounds echoing down the hall. The secretary seemed to want to melt into the other woman's body. Suddenly, a pool of blood started to slowly spread behind the woman in the business suit. As Yukino watched in horror, the blood flowed faster, staining the white wall behind her red. The secretary suddenly jerked her head back, tearing a chunk of flesh from the woman's face. Blood splattered everywhere. Yukino covered her mouth, frozen in shock, her stomach twisting violently. The secretary chewed and swallowed the flesh greedily, her mouth dripping with blood. Ugh! Yukino's stomach rebelled, and her suppressed gagging sound instantly caught the zombie's attention. The secretary zombie abandoned her victim, slowly rising and lunging toward them. Before the zombie could take more than 2 steps, a nearby door suddenly swung open. A sharp wooden stick jabbed out from inside, driving straight into the back of the secretary's head. Splurge! The sound was like slicing open an overripe watermelon. The secretary zombie collapsed to the ground, her dull gray eyes still staring at them. Get in, quick! Haruno Yukino urgently waved from the doorway. Yukino dashed inside, where Utaha Kazumijouka stood by the door with her bat, nodding at Yukino before anxiously calling to Sosuke, "Sosuke, hurry up! What are you still doing over there?" The secretary's skull had been pierced cleanly, her brain spilling out in a grotesque mess. But Sosuke bent down, waving at them. "Just a minute." He carefully examined the body, flipping it over and checking under the collar and along the limbs. With a disappointed look, he quietly returned to the room. Utaha immediately asked, "Did you find anything?" "No wounds on the body." Sosuke's expression was grave as he swept his gaze over the 3 girls, then locked eyes with Haruno. "Aside from the stab you gave her, I didn't find a single injury." "You mean?" Haruno's heart sank. There were strangulation marks on her neck. Someone killed her on purpose and let her turn. But she wasn't bitten. Haruno was more shocked by this revelation. "Does that mean anyone who dies will turn?" Sosuke nodded. "Being bitten just speeds things up. I don't know why, but just remember this." "But why would someone kill her?" "Maybe they had bad intentions. Maybe they wanted to silence her. Or maybe there's another reason," Sosuke added. He hadn't found a keycard on the secretary, but the killer might have taken it already. Perhaps the killer planned to use the president's elevator or wanted to get rid of someone under the cover of night by turning the secretary into a zombie. Either way, the person who uses that elevator next will be the prime suspect. Going downstairs? Unlikely. That would be suicide unless you had first-tier physical ability and combat skills like Sosuke. Going up? That's the smart play. After all, Toji had previously bragged that a helicopter would come for him. Looks like the killer pinned their hopes on that helicopter. Sosuke gripped his katana tightly. Looks like from now on, his enemies wouldn't just be the zombies. Ah! Help! There are zombies. Suddenly, terrified screams erupted from the other end of the corridor, followed by chaotic shouts. The once quiet hallway was instantly thrown into complete turmoil. Chapter 46, Charge to the Helipad. Sosuke Kitahara tightened his grip on his katana and rushed out. In the corridor, several survivors scrambled out of their rooms in a panic. One man tripped in the chaos, and a wolf-like figure shot out from the room, pouncing on him. Ah! A blood-curdling scream tore through the air, far more horrific than any assault. Sosuke's heart sank as he saw the zombie bite into the man's neck, violently jerking its head as blood gushed out like a fountain, spraying everywhere. Within seconds, the man twitched a few times before going limp. But the zombie kept gnawing on the corpse, relentless. Run! Zombies! Zombies are everywhere. A group that had run down the other end of the corridor soon doubled back. Leading them was Fumihiro, one of Toji's henchmen. He was pumping his arms desperately, running as if his life depended on it. But the zombies on the floor were alerted by the noise. One snarling zombie, like a rabid dog, clawed the ground and latched onto Fumihiro's leg, sinking its teeth deep into his flesh. "Help me!" Caught off guard, Fumihiro collapsed with a thud. Yet in a burst of adrenaline, he kicked the zombie hard, sending it tumbling away. The zombie, unfazed by pain, chewed the chunk of flesh it had torn from Fumihiro's leg as it staggered back up, blocking the retreat path of the other survivors. Then, a chilling sight unfolded. One by one, zombies poured in from the L-shaped corner of the corridor, densely packed, quickly filling the passage. There had to be at least 40 or 50 of them. "Run!" Sosuke's scalp tingled. He shouted at the 3 girls, "Head for the fire exit we came through. Go straight to the helipad." He sprinted back to the room, grabbed his backpack, and slung it over his shoulders. Apart from 2 bottles of water, the rest of the supplies were all compressed biscuits, lightweight and practical, minimizing his load. It wouldn't hinder his movements at all. Once again, Sosuke silently praised his own foresight. "Sosuke, there are zombies outside this door too. Should we open it?" The 3 girls stood at the fire exit, awaiting his decision. Sosuke peered through the crack and cursed. "Just open it. There's only a few outside. It's better than facing the horde behind us." Clang. The wooden barricade was removed, and the door shook violently as it flung open. 3 zombies tumbled in, one with a grotesquely twisted leg. Before they could pounce, a baseball bat and 2 sharpened sticks were already waiting to strike. Finally, this feels right. For the first time, Sosuke felt the girls were genuinely pulling their weight. Without waiting for his orders, they had decisively taken down all 3 zombies. Especially Utaha Kasamijoka, whose vicious blows smashed one zombie's eyes completely out of its sockets, spilling a grisly mix of red and white all over the floor. The stench was nauseating. But the girls only turned pale. Even Yukino Shida, who had gagged multiple times before, now only twitched but managed to suppress her urge to vomit. In the apocalypse, dignity came at a steep price, the price of fighting and dying. To survive, there was only one path: kill zombies. Kill even more zombies. The girls weren't just adapting, they were growing, far more than those useless cowards still screaming behind them. Sosuke glanced back. The zombies had nearly filled the corridor. A few desperate survivors were sprinting toward them, including Fumihiro, who limped frantically despite his injured leg. The exit was blocked with a messy pile of sofas, tables, and chairs, a barricade left over from yesterday. Some zombies were still trapped underneath. Utaha and Haruno Yukinoshita scrambled over first. They noticed the pinned zombies couldn't move and quickly turned to help Yukino up. "Yukino, grab my hand." Haruno reached for her sister, and Utaha rushed to assist. The pain in Yukino's eyes was fleeting but unmistakable. It wasn't just that she couldn't climb on her own. Her fall down the stairs yesterday had left more than just bruises. Every time she tried to exert force with her waist, a sharp, stabbing pain shot through her, causing sweat to bead on her forehead. She might have fractured something. Head to the helipad directly. Be careful, there might be zombies up there. At that familiar voice, Yukino suddenly felt herself lifted effortlessly. Her legs were supported, and in an instant, Sosuke was carrying her just like yesterday, soaring up the barricade. Ah! Wrapped in his familiar scent, Yukino felt an overwhelming sense of safety in Sosuke's arms. She tightened her grip around his neck, wishing he could just carry her forever. But that wish quickly shattered. Before she could fully savor the warmth, Sosuke spun her 90 degrees and gently set her down. "Sosuke! The helipad door is locked!" Utaha shouted in panic as Sosuke arrived, still catching his breath. Haruno was desperately slamming her shoulder against the door. "Hurry! Pull me up! I have the key." The voice came from below Fumihiro, panting heavily. He waved a key in desperation. Everyone stopped trying to force the door and rushed to pull him up. Fumihiro, despite his ghastly pale face, managed to hand the key to Sosuke. The lock clicked open easily, but the door barely budged before getting stuck. Even Haruno's frantic attempts couldn't force it open. "The door is blocked by something. Everyone get out of the way." Sosuke stepped back, gathering his strength. He focused all his power into his leg and launched a powerful kick at the door. But just as his foot was about to connect, he abruptly pulled back some of his force. Even so, the door still dented inward, a deep footprint left behind. "Wait, Sosuke, if you kick it like that, even if we open it, we might not be able to close it again," Utaha quickly pointed out. Sosuke broke into a cold sweat. He had almost made a critical mistake. His sheer strength concentrated into a single point was enough to deform the door. Forcing it open like that could render it permanently unusable. Sometimes, being too strong was a problem. Even a sturdy metal door couldn't withstand it. "Everyone, come help push the door." His roar snapped everyone back to action. Survivors who had climbed up joined in, lining up shoulder to shoulder. Together, they heaved against the door on Sosuke's count. 1, 2, 3, push. Bang. The solid door finally burst open, sending the entire group tumbling inside. Roar. "Oh no, zombies."